Hello, everyone, and welcome back to day 2 of the Data Summit. We're so happy you can join us again. And if you were here for day 1, you knew that it's a very full, great program, and we have another great day lined up for you. I have to say, I have been a fan of Amir Khan, and you can see why. He is just so thoughtful, so transformative, and just one of the nicest person that you will ever virtually meet or in person. And so thank you, Amir, for being our keynote and saying all those things to help us think different and help improve how we serve the communities that we have. So you heard Amir talk about the importance of people. And yesterday I happened to be on a panel and I talked a lot about people. So it is my absolute privilege to be able to talk about workforce of the future. What does that mean? What does that mean for the future of our utility? And we have great panelists, and I want to tell you a little bit about them. We have Dr. Glenda Scales from Virginia Tech. She's the Associate Dean for Global Engagement and Chief Technology Officer. And she's going to set the stage to give you a very compelling snapshot of what workforce looks like in utility today. Then we have Jim Horn from U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. He is our Sustainable Utilities Program Manager, and he is a champion of workforce innovation and development. And you'll enjoy all the things that's happening at the national level. And our anchor is Louisa Fromm from LA Times. She is their search engine optimization editor. And if you don't know what that means, she'll tell you all about it. But prior to LA Times, she also worked at Yahoo, Times, TMZ, so a lot of experience there to see how relevant we are in having these discussions. Because we all know the importance of people, we talk about this, but sometimes we overlook and don't pay enough time and attention to developing the people element of our business. And clearly, as we know, the workforce of the future requires people who are integrated. They understand how water plugs into every facet of society and appreciates that connectivity. And they're innovative. They want to continuously improve. And my definition of innovation is unleashing imagination to do good and help others. And of course, network. You gotta have friends. You can't do it by yourself. So workforce that is very connected with people throughout not just your region, but throughout the world, as Amir talked about. And of course, diversity, not just in walks of life, gender, or race, but about perspectives and nearing the world that is changing so rapidly around us. So without further ado, I am so excited and thrilled to turn this over to Dr. Scales to get the conversation going. Dr. Scales?
Hi, good morning, and thank you. I'm so honored to be a part of our panel, and I want to give a thank you to June for the opportunity to speak today. As you can see from my bio, I'm not a water expert. However, I am familiar with aspects of the water sector because I'm a consumer. Until recently, I really had not thought about how water enters and leaves my home here in Blacksburg, Virginia, or that there are still people in the US without running water. I definitely had not thought about the type of talent required for today's and tomorrow's work in the water field. Who are the people in the water field? I asked myself at times. I knew who those people were when I spent the summer with my grandparents over 50 years ago. Okay, don't try to get my age from that, okay? But because they had well water and it was my job to retrieve the water from the well for washing dishes and baths. No, I mean, it really wasn't a paid position. It's so different now. And when we look at the workforce and the water sector, we ask, what will it look like 50 years from now? So many of you may know Dr. Sunil Sinha. So when he says that there's an opportunity, you need to be a little cautious. So when he asked me, Sunil is the director of the Sustainable Water Infrastructure Management Center and the SWIM Center. So he recruited me to lead the workforce development pillar for their NSF Engineering Research Center proposal on Smart One Water. And then working with Melissa Meeker, the Chief Executive Officer at the Lawrenceville, she works at the Water Tower in Lawrenceville, Georgia. Working with both of them, I gained additional insight about the complexity of the water workforce. So if you could take me to slide 1, that would be great. And that was sort of like the background for me. June told us to have it as a conversational style. So I find that it's very challenging sometimes over Zoom, right? So yes, so here this is a slide. And so the key here is that what I know to be true for sure is that the water workforce of the future is broad and multifaceted. And so today I will share with you information on the challenges and opportunities specifically for attracting diverse talent and how there's a potential need for centralizing workforce data. Next slide, please. So when we talk about attracting a diverse workforce, some of the gaps in the pipeline, we look at the underrepresentation of groups here. And so I'm familiar with the challenges of recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce, as we have some of the similar challenges in the IT field. And then also when we look at the corporate cultures that are out there, and we'll talk more about the retirements and the growth and the vacancies that are upcoming, but then how do we use this all together in order to have a different workforce? And June, I really agree with you. I really enjoyed Amir's presentation, because when you think about Smart Water Network, that he presented earlier, it's a clear example of how the water sector must prepare to recruit talent with those critical IT and digital skills that will help utilities make that digital transformation. Next slide, please. So in my research of the water sector workforce, it is well documented that the water sector is primarily white and male. And so in looking at hiring a skilled, diverse, gender balanced workforce, this has been and remains a struggle for many of the water utilities. It would be a key strategy for water organizations to consider ways to eliminate current barriers in order to support a more diverse water workforce. And we can do this by highlighting the importance of looking for talent in non-traditional ways and places, and being strategic and intentional with implementing diversity initiatives. Next slide. Yeah, also from my research to work on the water workforce, it is also well documented that the water workforce is aging. And so data from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics Employment Projection Program identified 3 critical areas that will change the future landscape of the water sector. And that's separations, with the projection that about 10% of the water workforce will retire each year over the next decade. The workforce is projected to grow faster as compared with national averages, which then will lead to a number of vacancies. And so the Bureau of Labor Statistics Employment Projection Program estimated that around 3 million workers will retire or transfer out of the water sector by 2026. That's leaving about an average of over 200,000 jobs open annually. And so given the number of projected vacancies, I see this as an opportunity for us to find ways to hire underrepresented minorities and women for a variety of the existing and new positions. Next slide, please. I thought this was very interesting around the information about water hourly wages in education. Because you can see here the lower education levels required for many of the water positions, they do not correlate with lower wages. So in fact, in comparison with the nation's median for other occupations, water occupations pay more wages at the lower ends of the salary spectrum. However, as you can see as well, as similar positions in the industry, for the leadership positions, they don't pay as well. And so as more of the IT related positions emerge in the water sector, it's going to be critical for us to have competitive salaries. Next slide, please. So we talk about retaining a diverse, and Amir talked about this as well, the multi-generational workforce. I know several of you are providing leadership for over maybe 5 different generations, and the motivation for each of those groups will be different. Yet as we look at the way forward, it's going to be critical for us to recognize the importance of building a diverse and gender balanced organization, combined with partnering, I believe, with local organizations to help you reach your strategic goals. Most important is, and I also agreed with, June says this and Amir says this, that people are the key. So being able to find ways to invest in, in people to be able to help us find these innovative ways to diversify our workforce, I think is critical. Next slide, please. And then final thoughts here is, as we look at least as I look at my journey to find information about workforce data, to attain the data on the water workforce was not easy and straightforward. I mean, there was not a central location to find the information, nor is it clear that several of those key reports will be consistently updated. So there may be an opportunity to create a central location for water workforce data, with the goal of using that data and information to help inform the need for strategic workforce planning initiatives designed to attract and retain a diverse water workforce and change the perception of the water worker of today and of the future. So I believe that it's also a challenge. We need to challenge the leadership in the water sector to find ways to remove those hiring barriers and to seek talent, again, in non-traditional ways and places. And finally, I must give again, thank you to June and her team and my colleague, Dr. Carla Moreno, because I'm not the data person. Carla was a data person to be able to go and find all of the data in all these interesting areas in order for us to put together this presentation today. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Scales. I'm sure you can all see why after I heard her presentation months ago, I said, I need to have her give this presentation because it is compelling, it's real. And as much as deficiency in some of these areas that we see, it also lends a lot of opportunities going forward. And having said that, next up is my good friend Jim Horn from US EPA, and he's going to talk about what national priorities and actions are taking place right now. And Jim, I know what Dr. Scales covered is not news to you, and that's why you're so passionate about what you do. So tell us a little bit more about what you're working on.
Good morning. This is Jim Horn from US EPA in Washington, D.C. with the Office of Wastewater Management. I say good morning because I'm speaking to all these folks in California, and I'm looking at a beautiful picture of the sun coming up over the Pacific Ocean. And so I envy you today. But again, thank you very much for being on this wonderful summit that so many people have worked so hard to put on. It's a real honor for me to speak to you briefly today about a topic that I'm very passionate about. As I said, I'm with the Office of Wastewater Management here at EPA, and I'm the Sustainable Utilities Program Manager. And water workforce has become a very big issue, a very high priority for our office, which gives me a lot of pleasure, and it gives me the opportunity to work with a lot of great people like the people at Multnomah and Miguel and many other utilities. So again, thanks for the opportunity. And first slide, please, Meta. Okay, next slide, please. So before I talk about some of the specifics, some of the work that we're doing here at EPA and give you kind of a broader overview of the water workforce landscape, as we like to call it, I wrote these words on a slide a couple of weeks ago, and I was thinking about what it really means to be a world-class organization, whether you're in the water business or any other business. And I really came upon that idea after talking with some people with Louisville, Kentucky, that I've worked with in the past. But I think these really apply to every organization, and I think they're highly relevant to the challenges and the opportunities that we all have before us in ensuring a sustainable water workforce for the 21st century. So resiliency is a term that people use a lot. It's some time ago, I was getting a little tired of hearing the word resiliency. I thought it was used a little bit too much. But when I look at this simple equation here, it really struck home for me. Resiliency, both on the part of, say, in our case, water infrastructure, your hard infrastructure, but also more importantly, your organization and the people in your organization is really a matter of equity plus respect plus trust. Equity is a concept or a term we hear all the time these days, and I'm, like many people, just beginning to understand the depth of the term, but it has so much power and it means so many important things. But it really establishes for me sort of a fair relationship and a fair opportunity when you talk about the water sector to take advantage of the opportunities to do such great work in the water sector. Respect is something that really needs to permeate the organization. Respect from all angles, respect from the top down, respect from the bottom up, and respect among colleagues. And as I've had the opportunity to work with the folks from Molten Nagel, June and Meta and Drew Atwater and so many other people, I really began to understand how important that term respect is and how it really needs to be something that everybody practices every single day. The last part of the equation is simply trust. You build a trust relationship among the people in the organization. The reason that trust is so important to me, it goes back to the first term, resiliency. Trust is what gets you through. Trust is what gets you through not just the everyday activities, although it helps there, but trust is what gets you through, say, a situation like we're all facing in this country today through the pandemic, and situations that we're likely to face in the future, because I don't think anybody realistically thinks this is the last crisis of this proportion that we will ever see. Hopefully it won't be the same as this, but something is going to happen. And these elements that lead to your resiliency is really what makes an organization be able to go from good to great, in my idea. And so that's the term. Resiliency is a combination of equity, respect, and trust. And I think everybody ought to think about that no matter where you work, no matter what kind of work you do. So next, please. So we at EPA, and we're not unique by any means, but we are paying a lot of attention to this issue and have invested a lot of time in our own staff working with utilities all over the country to understand better what the whole range of challenges are in the water workforce arena. We came up with this very simple chart, which I talk from all the time, and we really call it a landscape chart. It really sort of lays out the full landscape or building blocks or pillars, whatever you want to call them, to enable an enabling environment, if you will, for an effective water sector workforce development and maintenance program. Now, we focus a lot on utilities. Utilities are all about what we do in my office. They are our customers, and I'm so happy about that. But when you look at this simple chart, it's all based about the notion of strategic workforce planning. Workforce planning is like anything else you do in your organization as part of your overall strategy. It's got to be thought through very carefully. You don't just run to the sort of the first opportunity or try to address the crisis of the day. It needs to be done carefully, and it needs to be done thoughtfully, and it's probably an ongoing process. So when you look at the rest of this landscape chart, if you will, the pillars that I see here and that I describe are the notion of recruitment. How do we bring people in to the water sector and into the individual organization to develop that pipeline of trained, motivated people, a more diverse workforce, I would certainly add, that really is going to strengthen and make the utility, in this particular case, truly sustainable. And more work is being done in that regard to really diversify the workforce, make sure that the workers coming into the organization have the right kinds of skills, including increasing reliance on what people would call digital skills and innovative technology. It's really, really important. And so the water sector does a great job. We all know how great a job it does, but a lot of people on the outside don't know. And so part of this recruitment approach is really to begin to sell water as a great place to have a career. Moving to the right-hand side is the notion of retention. And this is really when you bring into the equation these incredibly important concepts of organizational culture through human resources and a career path. Retention to me means once you've got people in the door, how do you keep them there? How do you keep them happy? How do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them there in your organization? If you'd asked the average utility executive 10 years ago about the importance of organizational culture, they would have looked at you like you were crazy, quite frankly. They said, well, it's all about asset management. And that's not meant as a slight, that's just reality. But I think as the water ecosystem, if you will, becomes more complex, as the challenges become more complex, more and more world-class organizations, like many of the organizations I'm probably talking to today, are recognizing the importance of building the right kind of culture to build a career path for employees, not just a job. Competency. Competency really gets to the notion of making sure that the people have the right skills in many cases technical skills, but other skills as well, communication skills, people skills, if you will, a whole range of skills to be effective on the job. A lot of training takes place, I think, through before people get to the organization, but I had a chance to talk to some people from Molton Nagel a few weeks ago, and there's a lot of education that needs to take place on the job by experienced professionals who can really help new employees understand the range of skills that they need and how to do things the right way. That's not an easy task sometimes, and it really gets back to the notion of sort of building a strategy for knowledge retention. You know, you have to make sure that what you can impart to employees is something that stays and can be passed on. And then finally, over on the right-hand side is a really interesting concept that I think more and more utilities are waking up to, if you will, and that's the notion of what we call building community partnerships. And this really gets to the notion of the utility being such an integral part of the overall economic and social well-being of the community, as well as providing, you know, high-level environmental services. But building community partnerships has a very practical application as well. For example, a number of utilities are reaching out to partner with educational institutions, whether those be community colleges, whether those be local school districts where you need to educate young people starting at a very early age about the importance of water. And then as they get older, hopefully getting them interested in a career in water. San Francisco Public Utilities Commission has a great program called Kinder to Career, which really focuses on this through in public schools throughout the city. It's a good thing to do. It's also the smart thing to do because you're building that sort of base of understanding and support and attracting people from your community into your workforce. Over on the right-hand side is just simply another series of factors that are important to sort of undertake to make this happen on a broad scale, all the things that I've been talking about. So you things like promotion, marketing, and outreach, both at the national level and at the local level, training and education, legislation. It's interesting that for the first time, Congress has finally appropriated direct grant funding for water workforce programs. In my office at EPA is getting very close to issuing the original, we call the RFA, for people interested in applying for these grant funds. That's never happened before in the whole history of EPA. And so that was done through a lot of legislation, a lot of hard work on the Hill, and we're very happy that they did. Whole range of tools and resources need to be built into each of these kind of pillars or elements in the body of the chart that I talked about. There needs to be some sector strategic planning. Sector strategic planning is different than just one organization, one national association, one EPA, people like that really thinking sector-wide. It really requires a coalition of these leading national organizations that have the interest of the entire sector at heart to come together and really plan this incredibly important challenge around water workforce. And then the whole notion of diagnostics, analysis, if you will. What is the analysis necessary to understand the sector in detail? And certainly I would say break down that information, perhaps on a local or regional level where it can be put to the greatest use. So the message of this chart, if you will, is that all of these pillars, if you will, are important. No one is more important than the other. No particular element. They all need to work together in a very strategic sort of way. And you're finding that the leading utilities are really beginning to do that. And the challenge that we face at EPA is to really bring that knowledge base, if you will, to those utilities who are not quite as far along in their thinking. So next, please. So let me talk a little bit about some things that are happening on the ground, as I like to say at EPA. And I don't mean to suggest that we're the only organization that's paying a lot of attention to water workforce. Far from it. We don't have time today for me to summarize all the other great work that's taking place with professional associations, other federal agencies, lots of people. But here are 3 examples of things that we're working on. We are just about to finish up a very nice compendium of water workforce case studies. with 8 utilities around the country, one of which I'm delighted to say is Multnagel, and we're delighted to have worked with those folks for the last several months. But the purpose of this is really to highlight a range of innovative approaches that these utilities around the country, small, medium, and large, are using to address their own particular workforce challenges. It's interesting, a lot of the utilities, a lot of the case studies focus on sort of external recruiting, I would say, bringing in a more diverse community, and that's great. But some of them actually focus on how do you go back and make sure that the employees that you have now have got the right training and the right skills and the right career path to really stay on the job. And so I'm delighted that with the range of approaches that will be featured in these case studies, and we are going through the final review process here at EPA and expect to have these out later in the fall. And I'm really looking forward to that. It's been a lot of fun working with these utilities. We also have an ongoing water workforce webinar series, and I will send a flyer about the webinar series to you, Meta, if you don't have it, that you can share with the audience, if you will, that also provides access to the recorded versions of previous webinars and slides. We use this as a platform to really highlight a whole range of issues around water workforce, not just those focusing on individual utilities, although there's a strong flavor of that, but also other issues that we think are important. Partnerships with schools. We've got one coming up on the local water, state and local water workforce boards, who are very important entities in many states in terms of allocating federal resources to workforce priorities across an entire state. We also plan to do a webinar later this year on innovative technology adoption. We all know how important that is, but it's not just a matter of saying, gosh, it's really important that people understand and be comfortable with innovative technology. How do you make that happen? It's you know, there are ups and downs of that process of bringing that on board and making sure that your workforce has the right training and you give them the right comfort level so that they can use the technology effectively. So we hope to do one on that particular topic by the end of the year. And then finally, circling back to something I said a few minutes ago, there is a new workforce grant, again, that was authorized by the Congress, I think 2 years ago, and funds were appropriated last year. We are just about to issue the request for proposals. That will be targeted to nonprofit organizations with a very heavy focus on programs or activities that really focus on promoting water careers and education. We think that's just an incredibly important part of the whole workforce Rubik's Cube, if you want to call it that. This notion of how do you educate people about the importance of working in water and really begin to show them what is the pathway. How do you go about doing that in water? And we hope to get a lot of proposals in from organizations that focus a lot on that. So we're excited about that. It's the first time, I think I said, in EPA's history, it's the first time that I know of that the Congress has ever shown any particular interest in water workforce. And we're delighted that that's on the books, and we plan to have the new grants issued probably later this year. It takes a while to set up a new program like this, but we are moving ahead very quickly. And so those are just a few highlights of important things happening just within my sphere, if you will. The other thing I'd like to say is that I know this is a data conference, and I'm really happy that it is. I know a lot of work has gone into the conference, and I've enjoyed listening to the opening speakers. I would just like to say that I hear the term big data a lot, and that term sometimes scares me a little bit. I just think we need to focus an awful lot on smart data or fit for purpose data, if you will. What's the right data in the right amount for the right decisions, not just collecting more and more data. Now, I'm probably preaching to the choir, I understand that. But when I think about that, I think about somebody like, say, June Lopez or her division managers, the head of operations. What do those people actually need to make the right kinds of decisions today, but also to have a kind of a good picture of what might be coming down the road? And so as we think about the importance of data, again, think about that notion of kind of fit for purpose data. That doesn't mean just piling on more and more data. It's right data for right decisions at the right time. And I'm sure you all are aware of that and are going to be giving that some serious consideration. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm always available to talk further, to share information. And again, I'd just like to thank the people from Multan Nagel for the opportunity to speak. Again, it's been such a pleasure to work with them and learn so much about what they're doing and learn more about what utilities all over the country are doing. This is an incredibly important challenge. This will define the effectiveness of the water sector, I think, in this century. And so we all need to pay attention to it and pull together. So again, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and thank you again.
So with that, Louisa, we're going to have you go next. And I was so excited to have Louisa on this because we talk a lot about needs of utilities, workforce challenges, all these things that we know, but we kind of tend to talk to each other. And I wanted to do a little bit of a reality check to see if what we're saying is making sense. Is it resonating? Is it relevant to how the world is communicating today, especially at this time when there is so much social dialogue about diversity? So with that, Louisa, tell us, how are we doing? And especially what you do.
Awesome. Well, hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So hi, everyone. My name is Louisa Fromm. It's a true honor to be joining this panel today. Thank you so much, June. My mother is powerhouse water lawyer Chris Fromm, and since I was a little girl, she has schooled me on California water issues. During elementary school, one of my proudest moments was giving a top-notch presentation on the California drought forecast to my 3rd grade class. So I'm very excited to add my digital marketing perspective to the mix today. My career in news has been very exciting and ever evolving. In the past, as June had mentioned, I've had the pleasure of conducting SEO strategy for E! Entertainment, Yahoo, TMZ, People Magazine, and Entertainment Weekly. Throughout my wild ride in my industry, I've covered celebrity deaths, elections, tragedies, and scandals. Though I've worked with a lot of crazy topics, the coronavirus pandemic definitely takes the top spot for the most intense news cycle. The theme of this overall event is resilience, which is a topic I can connect with greatly in my journalism career. The news cycle changes every single day, which can be simultaneously exciting and exhausting. Working in media brings massive highs and lows that are difficult to predict, especially as legacy print institutions transition into the new digital world. The only thing that's predictable is that no day will ever be exactly the same. You have to really love what you do, which is true for me. My current position as SEO editor at the LA Times has been especially fulfilling, being a proud Southern California native. Contributing to the digital growth of an institution I've loved and respected my entire life has been a tremendous honor. So what does SEO even mean? You guys are probably thinking that, right? SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization. I always simplify that phrase to Google marketing. SEO is all about the techniques that digital strategists use to improve brand search rankings in Google. E-commerce makes the explanation easy. To connect with a brown pants Google search, brands should highlight the phrase brown pants in on-page elements on their website to directly match up with that user query. Doing so plays into Google's algorithm, which improves your odds of appearing towards the top of the page for that search. And when you appear towards the top, users are more likely to click on your website, find your product, and take the desired action, which is often making a purchase of some kind. For news, imagine this setup, but a million times faster. In the case of the LA Times, our ever-changing products are news articles, which hopefully encourage users to sign up for paid subscriptions. When breaking news hits, it's my job to know what keywords to target in the SEO headline that Google will see, so we can get optimal positioning on search results pages and beat out our primary competitors like the New York Times, the Washington Post, and CNN. The 2020 news cycle has been extra challenging with the constant onslaught of demanding stories. Fun fact, at the beginning of the pandemic, coronavirus terms had more search volume over COVID-19 terms. In the last 2 months, that trend flip-flopped. It's my job to notice that and adjust our content strategy accordingly. Data analysis is key to success with the type of work that I do. I spend a good portion of my day in a tool called Google Trends that allows me to look up keyword search insights in real time on the story topics that people care about the most. Through the tool, I can view Google's breakdown of top trending stories at that moment and compare keyword variations to choose the best words to highlight in our headlines. This information is invaluable, allowing me to flag top priority topics for our sections to pursue and fine-tune the keyword choices on articles that are already in the works. Prior to today's panel, I researched water in Google Trends to gain some new SEO insight into the topic. Looking at a period of the last 30 days, top terms included water filter, water heater, water pump, water bottle, water bill, water tank, water company, water department, and water softener. Looking at California water specifically over the last 12 months, top terms included California water law, California water service, California city water, California water bill, California water company, California drinking water, California water board, and California tap water. For many folks on the line today, if we were to discuss SEO strategy with this particular subject matter, my first point would be to examine your existing website and overall content to find ways to incorporate these top terms. By incorporating top search queries into their content, brands can optimize the connection they have with their audiences. The yellow pages are out. SEO is the new key to finding services, products, and general content online. Utilizing SEO best practices can help brands better connect with their target audiences to secure optimal digital exposure and achieve their goals. To sync SEO with the water workforce of the future, utilizing top related queries with all aspects of your online content will help you connect with target audiences and prospective candidates. With younger demographics in particular, it is crucial to utilize SEO channels as people spend increasingly more time online. SEO will be a key tool in helping to secure the next generation of water innovators. I'm excited to chat further in this panel. Thanks, June.
Thank you, Louisa. I just have so many questions. You touched upon so many things, and this is why we love having you here. Give us that fresh perspective, and we look forward to having a dialogue. So anyways, US EPA workforce development being one of their top priorities, has identified 8 utilities across the country for best case studies in workforce development. And Molten Lagell, we were so excited and proud to be one of those 8. And the real idea here is to show examples of how things are done in different parts of the country and in different types and sizes of utilities. So it's not just for big agencies that can do great workforce development and recruitment. Anyone can do it. And what are the strategies that are working and also not working? Sharing successes and failures is really what Jim is all about. In the meantime, as he's going through this process, he's connecting people all over the country so that we can start this network of conversation amongst ourselves. And when you see these case studies, and it's coming out very soon, and we'll be very excited to share with this group, it's a really great collection of stories about the efforts at the ground level. And it also really sets the need for where we need to go in the future, just like Dr. Scale talked about. What are the gaps in our workforce, in terms of diversity, skill sets, perspectives, and really trying to line that up so that we are not just being responsive to the needs, but that we can anticipate what the future needs will be. And of course, any of these efforts require funding, and Jim and his network of national, local champions of workforce promotion, they are trying to provide the funding at the national level necessary to do this very important work. Now, it takes a lot of work though, because there are so many competing interests and concerns, especially today. And when you talk about water quality and safety infrastructure, these are the things that are on top of everyone's mind. Because as a utility, we've done a really great job of flying under the radar. And now that's kind of haunting us because people really don't know all that it takes to get the water to your tap. And all the people, all the history, the heritage that lies behind that drop of water. And so part of the challenge is how do we tell that better story? And that is exactly what Jim is doing through these case studies, sharing stories, creating success, and creating a venue and a mindset to where everyone is focused on this. Because clearly, as we talked about, especially in crisis, it is the human element that gets tested the most. You can have all the tools and all the technology and all the plans, but without people, you have absolutely nothing. And I know I'm not doing Jim justice here, and what we'll do, because we're having trouble with his audio, is after this, we will send out to this entire database a recorded message from Jim so that you can really hear the details. And Jim is he's a connector. And he is amazing. So he will be more than happy to take your calls and emails. I am certain of that because he always takes mine. And part of my appreciation for Jim is not just the work that he does at US EPA, but just who he is as a person who truly cares. And that's the kind of characteristics and qualities we need to really champion these efforts forward. So with that, I'm going to do some round of questions right now. And as Dr. Scales, you heard about Louisa's, Jim, are you there?
Ruth?
We are still having problems, sorry. Sorry, Jim. But like I said, we'll get you on a recording if we don't break through today. Okay, so with what Louisa was saying, Dr. Scales, from what you have seen, both in terms of data and just the efforts now that you are so plugged into this topic, you heard her talk about what it's going to take in order to effectively do the work that we're talking about, utilization of technology, and how especially the younger generation is communicating and getting their information. So what are some of these efforts? Are you seeing this at nationally from your work? And do you see the value in working with media channels like Louisa to advance some of these initiatives?
June, if you could repeat the beginning part,
Sure.
It was, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I know there was a little bit of feedback and interruption. So we heard from Louisa about sort of the necessity of using technology to communicate, especially to the younger generation, in order to advance the work that we're all talking about, that we have to embrace the new way of communicating and obtaining our information. So I was wondering what, if any, efforts like that you have seen in your work throughout the country, and how might we be able to leverage media channels and some of the things that Louisa talked about to really promote this workforce diversity and in so many ways that you presented?
So that's an excellent question. And I think that, as I think through that, it's the awareness. How are people becoming aware of the opportunities? Okay, so you can look at awareness where you have Instagram, you have some of these other ways of trying to to reach folks at a particular area, depending upon, and also it's interesting depending upon the type of position that you're advertising for as well. But I think for us it's how do you actually put that information out there to attract the positions for the recruitment piece of it, and then how do you ensure that then you're able to find a match, because you have so many, I kind of call it the old days, you would go in and give your application to someone, but today is how are we teaching the young people about how to communicate their skill set digitally? Do you have a LinkedIn profile? Do you have, what ways are people advertising positions, and then are you able to find it? And so then that sets up a whole different conversation. And the pandemic is really highlighting the digital divide again. That was a conversation earlier in the 80s, but if I have to apply and I need a account to apply, but I don't have access to the internet, then how, is that going to be a differential for me being able to gain access to positions? So I think in summary, there are a couple of ways. One, how do we use the digital ways of teaching our folks how to place your information out there in a digital space to be able to gain access to positions. And then how do we ensure that everyone has access? So those are the two pieces that I would highlight.
And if you think about just your title, Louisa, I mean, that doesn't exist in water. And you said that prior to this panel, you Googled us and you looked us up. So you're the younger generation. So that's why I'm posing this question to you. How do we as an industry get someone like you to be interested in water? Because you saw some of the statistics that Dr. Scales put there. So what can we do? And what are we not doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think to start off, it's helped me a lot to have a great mentor. To go back to her again. I mean, my mom always preached.
Louisa speaking, I can see your face.
Oh, wow.
Sorry.
Okay, so we'll get Jim after your response, Louisa.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because since I did have that great education from my mom, just being exposed to the right people helped me to always understand the value of utilities. My mom has preached that to me for a long time, so that definitely helps. I want to also touch on something that Glenda said, because LinkedIn has been invaluable in my career, and I'm not alone out of the younger demographic. It's huge, within journalism. It's obviously helped me, but across a wide swath of industries, it's extremely relevant. So I think utilizing that keyword strategy that I was referring to throughout my presentation on sites like LinkedIn, Indeed, can be extremely helpful, because you can actually hashtag things on there that are related to what, maybe the applicant that you're seeking. So that would be a good way to connect with the right people, to hashtag water conservation, things like that, to bring more people into the fold and to have them participate in the conversation. Another thing, just thinking of, this kind of coverage that we do at the Times, connecting with different people in the industry. This isn't about water specifically, but we have a great guy on our staff named Sammy Roth, who is very environmental, awareness focused. So he's all about energy conservation, covers it consistently. It's his beat. So how about connecting with people like that, who, they have large Twitter followings, they have people who follow them and would trust them, and bringing them in and maybe seeing who do you know that maybe would be a good fit for this? Because then you're really weaving this web that could be very promising, because that you're talking to someone who fully understands your subject matter and can probably connect you to someone who would be very efficient in that role. So I think that's one way you could use the media, is to connect with talented people like Sammy, who, might, because, I can definitely speak to it. The whole, kind of anonymous online job application thing is very daunting, and it's just overwhelming for everybody. It really is. So as you've kind of hinted at today, the more you can kind of make that circle a little bit smaller, I think the better chances of success that you have. So utilizing those sorts of resources and people who really know what they're talking about will help you to find the right person.
I love that suggestion, because it's something I certainly never thought about. I mean, I know word of mouth, but latching on to these other Instagrams and other Twitter things where they do have a following, so you're getting the message out to a very target-rich group of people. So I love that suggestion.
Yes.
We talked about how do you create the buzz and the excitement,
Yes.
and you heard from Dr. Scales, you heard from Louisa. Will there be an opportunity for the different stakeholders to participate in the launching and the promotion of these case studies?
There will be, June. We are certainly working with all of the national associations to get them to help with the launch, if you will. They participated in the identification or the nomination of some of the utilities, including your own, because I didn't know who Multa-Nagel was at the time. But yes, we want to do that. But I think when you say launch, this is a continual thing. You've got to continue to build on this. One of our goals is to empower people like you and other people even more to say, okay, you guys are now the examples. You are the ambassadors. My organization can provide the platform to help you reach a national audience through webinars, through any number of things. And we are very, very capable and delighted to be able to do that. And so we look forward to it, but it's just the start. It's not the end. And so we're so excited. June, I've told you this. 8 months ago, I didn't know how I felt about case studies. Yeah, that sounds great. But as I read through all of these, I said, wow, this is really fantastic. All these people doing this across the country in slightly different ways and for slightly, with slightly different goals, but all fantastic. And so June has reminded me that we are on a little tight time schedule. And June, I
Yes.
thank you for your patience, but I do ask for 30 more seconds. I do want to make an important announcement here, and that is Multan Nagel has just been accepted into the most prestigious water sector utility recognition program in the country. That's called the Utility of the Future is Now program, managed by the Water Environment Federation, with support from my office at EPA, other national water sector organizations. And in June, I couldn't be prouder of you folks. It's just fantastic. You're not the only California utility in the program, but what I found out the other day, I wanted to make sure June knew before I knew, so that was the key. But I just can't say how happy I am for you. So this is exactly the kind of thing that we at EPA want to promote. These true leaders in the water sector, in workforce, in all types of innovations. And when I read through the application that June and her great team had put together, I said, man, this is like a great read. Maybe this sounds like a novel here. Maybe they ought to, publish this thing. So let me just wrap up by saying, I don't know how you do this virtually, but if everybody on the line could either give a virtual thumbs up or pound on the table or send June and her team, Drew Atwater and Meta Patel, just a little note of congratulations, I'd certainly appreciate it because they have done a terrific job, and this is exactly the reason that we created this kind of program. And so, June, I've told you this before, but I'll say it again in front of this audience. Congratulations. You've got a great bunch of people. You've worked incredibly hard to get where you are, and it's just the start. So thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate your indulgence as we work through these technical difficulties, and it's a real pleasure to speak before you today. Keep on going.
Thank you so much, Jim. And I hate to end this conversation. And as Jim said, this is not the end. This is a starting point. And we're going to do more of these. And I'm already coming up with a lot of ideas, which always makes my staff nervous, but I'm always inspired
too, June,
to keep this conversation going and get all of you out there involved, because you know what? It takes a community to do big things. And that's exactly what this summit is about. And so before our panel, we heard from Amir, who's, again, amazing. But now you're going to hear a panel that's also just amazing. And Tom Ferguson, who is a superstar, is going to moderate a panel of some of my great friends that I had a chance to meet because of him. So thank you so much for tuning in, and stay tuned and working with us and being patient through the technical difficulties. But not for the rest of the panels out there for the rest of the day. We got all the kinks worked out, and you can only go up from here. So thank you so much to our panelists for joining us today virtually, and we look forward to working with you and learning from you to really bring the people element to the level that it deserves. So back to you, Scott.
June.
Thank you very much, June, and congratulations. That's news to me. Fantastic news. Wonderful. Panelists, Water Workforce of the Future, fantastic job. Thank you to Glenda, Luisa, and James as well. James, we're all going to have technology difficulties in our future presentations, so do not worry about it. In fact, I was alerted to the fact that my sound quality was poor, so I moved to a conference room, and hopefully it's better now. In any case, thank you again. Congratulations, June.